which should now work.
Yes.
So then, after using a couple more tools very badly, I now have a square piece of wood. And I've now discovered something that the woodworkers watching probably realized at the beginning of this video. This wood is wet, like really wet. And woodworkers use a stupid little electric meter to check the water content of wood. But I've got my own DIY method, which works just as well. And if I want the axe to be strong, I'm going to have to find some way to remove the water from the wood. And at first I didn't get the wood hot enough. Then I got it way too hot. Then I got it way too cold. But eventually I got it just right. And at first I was making a joke about microwaving wood, but it actually is a real method used by old people to get their wood hot. And you are meant to do it slowly, over a couple of days so it doesn't crack, which I didn't do. But I should be able to make my axe, avoiding these cracks on the side. And now for the straw test to check the moisture level.
Perfect. Perfect.
So then I drew what I wanted the axe to look like before taking it back to the wrong tools to remove some of the wood. And after almost pulling my hand into the saw blade, I decided there must be a safer way. But decided to use my new belt sander instead. Which I managed to damage immediately. New belt sander instead. Which I managed to damage immediately.
Well, I f***ed that up real quick.
Now, if you were following along at home making an axe, you were probably annoyed I've now whipped out a $1,000 tool that you don't have access to. But don't you worry, there is an easy way you can fix this. All you have to do is steal mine. My family goes to bed pretty early, around 9 PM. Then you just need to come into my yard. Then you will see this innocent bucket of water which you need to reach inside, and you will find my spare key, allowing you to access my house, garage and belt sander. Oh, and also, if one of my family members or I wake up and confront you, just say you're mates with IDAT and they'll understand.
What are you doing?
I'm mates with Ida.
Oh, alright, just keep it down please, you're a bit noisy.
Okay, and this was super easy on the belt sander. Much easier than my other woodworking projects, like my dumbest video ever, making a spoon using only a spoon. And speaking of pointless, I wasn't actually intending to make this video now. I was actually working on making a monofin.
Carbon fibre. Wow.
I was going to use it to race some humpback whales. But then lockdown happened in Sydney and no one, including the whales, are allowed to move around. But I can't complain. It's nice that essential workers like doctors, nurses and YouTubers still have jobs and are able to make some cash during a pandemic. Okay, once I had sanded away my previous sketch of the axe and made it a little slimmer, I marked a new and improved sketch that I want to follow. And some of you are probably thinking this axe looks way too chunky, but I think the only chance I have of this actually working and being able to cut into the stump is if the axe head is as thick and strong as possible. I also cut it so the grain is running up this way, which should hopefully be strong. A bit like when you're making spaghetti and you go to prepare the pasta. All good Italian chefs know that when you try to cut your pasta this way, the knife slips through and cuts your hand. But when I hold it this way, the knife can't slip in between the pasta and the pasta is much stronger. So hopefully the same logic works with this axe. Alrighty, and after inhaling and grinding away more lines than a Wall Street banker, my axe head was starting to look like an axe. And during this whole process, I thought I was being smart by having this large fan that I borrowed from the drug dealer's house, which did work very well in blowing the sawdust away from me. But I forgot about the placement of my car and completely covered it in a layer of sappy sawdust, which also got into my AC and now gets into my lungs every time I turn on my car. Okay, I'm happy with this. So I'm going to start drilling out the hole for the handle. And if I remember right, I think I've got some of the same wood from this tree lying around in a yard that will be perfect for the handle. And I think this piece of wood is going to work. And here's a hot tip for you. Find the piece of wood you're going to use for the handle before you make the hole in the axe head, as I made my hole too big. But I should still be able to make this work by stuffing some smaller wood into the gaps. So I started work on the handle and began sanding it away to get a good fit in the head. But because I'm not used to this belt sander, and the belt is quite aggressive, I'm taking off really large amounts of wood. And it started to scare me. Like, what if I don't get it right and I keep having to sand more and more away? And more and more. And then the handle disappears. And then it's just me, disappearing into the sander. And then I'm gone. And there's nothing left besides a stupid apron. So to avoid this happening, I decided to file it by hand. And eventually, I got a pretty nice fit. And that caused me to get a little too excited, and I ejaculated all over the piece of wood, before stuffing in little pieces of wood and leaving it to dry overnight. So once my cum was dry, I decided to cut off the excess wood on my old bandsaw that sounds like it's about to die. Yes. And then remove the rest on the sander. Now usually when you attach a handle to an axe head, you cut a slot in the end of the handle and put a wedge in it and hit it so that the handle expands inside the head, locking it in place. But since my axe head is made out of softish wood, it would definitely crack open if I did this. So instead I'm going to put it together using another plant that grows in my garden, dao grass. So I just carefully knocked in these two dowels, which should hold the axe head in place. Come on! Don't be broken. And after sanding away the dao grass, I gave it a gentle sand with fine sandpaper to remove all the little scratches and cum. Okay, we are almost there. And after taking a look at the video and thumbnail on YouTube, I rather like the look of the clickbait leaves on the side of the handle. So I glued them back on. Oh. And I also realized I want to give the wood a slight layer of protection, and usually to do this you use linseed oil, but I don't have any. So I just stole a salad and used some olive oil and vinegar and lettuce to protect the wood and bring out the grain. And take a look at that grain.
That is a sexy grain. Look at that grain.
Alright, let's go cut down a tree. Although, because I only have one axe and I only get one shot at this, I decided to 3D print a little axe and also a little tree stump so I can get a practice swing before going full scale. And if you also want to 3D print your own cute little axe, you can go to Thangs.com, who is the sponsor of this video. Thangs is the fastest growing 3D community with over 2.5 million available models to search, store, and collaborate on. It's really easy to search for things on Thangs. Let's say I want to see which other idiots have uploaded axes. I can find the designs and easily preview them in augmented reality. No app is required on iOS or Android. This is a great way to check out a model before you print it. Thangs is great for dumb people like me, as you don't have to know exactly what you are looking for. You can upload a partial model and see which similar models already exist to help you finish your project. Whether you are looking to find or share a model, Thangs will make your life so much easier. So go click my link in the description below and start exploring today. Okay, now I'm ready to see if I can cut down a tree using only a tree. That was a waste of a month.
That relic is the key to saving Anne. I know it. Meet me outside of Feldcroft
Thanks for
as
watching.
soon as you can.
If you like that, please subscribe and check out some of my other videos. How you going? See, the other day, I was at How you going? Australian animals have developed some pretty cool and creative ways of protecting themselves, like echidnas,
It looks like a dink.
magpies, stingrays,
The late Steve Irwin.
and hermit crabs. But some of their methods aren't quite strong enough. So today, I'm going to make hermit crabs stronger by giving them some armor and weapons, so they can destroy anything that tries to touch them. Alright, the first thing I need is some hermit crabs, and I could just buy them from the store, but they are expensive, and it also seems a little unethical. So instead, I decided to get them from the wild, taking them away from their home, family, and friends. Now I want to find a crab that is around 3 centimeters in diameter, so I brought my tape measure and began to measure. But after losing a tug of war with an octopus,
Oh, he got it. He's strong.
I gave up on the measuring and started searching for any shells I could find, but unfortunately all the shells were either empty or occupied with snails, which I crushed up for the fish,
Dink has some exciting
who started
news
to get
share.
really friendly with me, almost too friendly.
Professor
So I
Wilson
decided
said
to
you had
call
an
it
idea.
and get out
Indeed,
before I
the
get up to any
does.
funny business, as these guys are notoriously named
Well,
blue
I'd better go and
gropers.
rescue it then, hadn't I?
So I
Do you
started
think
looking
so?
in the rock pools, creeks, and just anywhere with water until eventually I found this guy. I saw this rock moving before. So then I gave the rock a wash and began looking for more. And after searching some more in this area, I found 2 more hermit crabs. Let's call them Sandy, Randy, and Handy. And I made them this home, which is filled with sand and random Lego pieces, but more importantly has a heat mat that emulates the warmth that a hermit crab is used to getting from heat mats that exist naturally in the wild. Okay, now I just need to make the metal shells. And the first thing that comes to mind is casting their shells out of aluminium. And I can do this by 3D printing some shells with some cool designs like this, and then taking a cast of the 3D print and then pouring metal in to fill the mold. And I want the crab's armor to still look like shells, but also have a Mad Max style to it, with stuff like armor plates, some spikes, buzz saws. So I 3D printed all my shell designs and baked them in the sun to harden up. Then cast one in plaster with some arms for the molten metal to run down and left that for a couple of days to dry. Now I'm hoping that when the molten metal enters the holes, it will instantly melt the resin and styrofoam, creating a void which the metal will fill. So next thing, I invited the neighbours' kids over for a 24-pack.
We're not leaving until you finish. Alright?
And then collected all the cans, which I melted down in my furnace. And while the cans are melting, it's the perfect time to tell you about today's sponsor, KiwiCo, which is a much better thing to get for your kids instead of drinks. KiwiCo is a subscription service where you get a STEM project in the post once a month. Everything you need is there in the box, meaning you don't need to go to the shops for batteries or anything. The crates teach science, art, and engineering and are designed to spark a child's curiosity and creativity. I was really impressed by this domino machine and this walking robot, which both teach awesome engineering and design concepts. I really enjoyed this do-it-yourself air hockey kit, which is aged 5+, so is perfect for me and my friends. KiwiCo has heaps of different crates to choose from, and each monthly crate is designed by experts and tested by kids, so it really is the perfect thing for you to get for the kids in your life. And I really wish I had KiwiCo to play with as a child, instead of what my mum gave me. So, if you want to try it out and support my channel, click the link in the description and get your first month free. Thanks to KiwiCo for sponsoring the video. Okay, now time to check on the cans. And when they seemed liquidy enough, I poured them into the mold.
Myriad interesting artifacts. Good to see you again. Are you? No doubt you're not all.
Did you say Brad?
And I don't think there is any chance that this worked. So I gently cracked it open to look. And that didn't work at all. The aluminium didn't run into the hole, and I could try again, but the bad thing about doing this with plaster is the mold is not reusable and takes a very long time to remake. So instead I decided to make a mold out of high temperature silicon, which I've used before to make high temperature flashlights. And then we'll use pewter as the metal, which I can just melt on the stove, which is great, as I won't burn myself as much. And to make
Keen-eyed students will spot the statue of Sir Halfpuddle of the cheerful countenance nestled among the ranks.
Velia.
Fame was not won by vanquishing foes in single combat, nor...
This is a centuries-old likeness of Pangadon. People have always loved their pets. I find that comforting.
celebrated by old friends and newcomers alike. I encourage everyone to make the waving statues acquainted. There's nothing quite so magical as history. Dusty, immutable history. The Hogwarts founders could never have achieved such architectural majesty without the aid of powerful magic. Hogwarts is impervious to the inexorable march of time. Perhaps that is why I admire it so. As one would expect, Hogwarts continues to do nothing.
What I wouldn't give to be back on a broom right now.
There's nothing quite so magical as history. Dusty, immutable. All the centuries that Hogwarts has existed. Once as it collapsed.
The silicon mold, I took the resin shell and placed it at the bottom of this PVC pipe, and then poured silicon over the top until it almost came over the shell. Then I let that dry before pouring another layer on the top so it runs inside the shell, and then let that dry. And now hopefully I can neatly pull apart the layers, creating a two-part mold.
Professor Binns.
Join together.
Which didn't work. So I made another one. This time I used graphite powder so they would separate. Now comes the pewter, which is this metal here, which makes you feel incredibly strong, which I just cut into chunks. And then melted it down in this little saucepan. And if you're following along from home, it's very important that you also use a pot with a plastic handle like this one, which will catch on fire, releasing poisonous fumes. Then once the metal was no longer its solid self, I poured it into this hole. Creating this. And it turns out casting a hollow spiral tube is very hard, but I kept trying. And after pouring and destroying at least 10 molds, I finally managed to get this.
That one actually looks pretty good.
Which is almost good enough, but I've realized a problem. This shell is very heavy, at 90 grams. And if we compare that to the weight of a hermit crab, which is 0. The shell weighs infinitely more, which is a big difference. So I need to come up with some other way of doing this, and I think electroplating is my best bet. The first thing I need to do is make a bath filled with the metal I want to plate in, which is nickel. So I just got 2 nickel plates and put them in a vinegar solution, and then got this wire and attached it to both plates. And then, very quickly, the bath turned from clear to green, meaning it's now filled with nickel. And I know this setup looks bad, like I'm making meth or something. Which I am doing, don't get me wrong, but just not here on this table.
Revelia.
Okay, now that I have my green bath, I tested to see if I even know how to electroplate using this copper wire, which I connected to the negative power and then put the positive on this nickel chunk. And now hopefully the nickel metal moves from the negative through the bath onto the copper, coating it in nickel. And after only dunking it in the solution for like 30 seconds, the copper wire was covered in a layer of nickel, which means this should work. So I covered the shells in a conductive paint and put them in and waited, and waited, and waited. And the shells were much slower than the copper wire, but it does look like it's working as I can see some nickel. So I left them overnight. And this doesn't actually look that bad at all. It's kind of shiny and is also very light, while also having the added strength from the metal. And best of all, it makes this noise, which is good enough for me. So I coated a bunch of different shell designs, sizes, and then also did some in copper, which looks awesome and has this crystalline metal growth on the end of the spikes, which makes the copper almost look organic. And then put all the shells in the tank for the hermit crabs to choose. And this is the annoying bit of the video for me, as I have no idea how long the crabs are going to take to pick a shell. And after watching them for a week, nothing happened. Although I did learn a lot about the crabs, like that Sandy loves to eat fish, Randy loves digging in the corner, and Handy, well, he loves... yeah. But more importantly, I learned that all of them are liars. And despite what a hermit crab tells you, they are not actually crabs at all, and had been lying to me for 2 weeks before I discovered they were actually something called a decapod crustacean. And I have no idea what that means. But in the end, it doesn't really matter, because it looks like something has finally happened. And I came back to the tank one night to find this empty shell, and Randy in his beautiful new home.
Look. He's got armor.
Revelio.